Hello, Ted. Welcome in Bed and Blues in HALEN.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Forward to a great performance.
Good.
We know you can do that because we've seen you now about 20 years ago already in Holland, and since then you have been performing quite often in Europe.
Yeah.
But let's start where you started. That was about 30 years ago, I think, where you started as KAMP on a jazz record, if I remember well, Dedication.
Yeah.
And then you moved to Ponticello, which was a bit, not real jazz, but...
No, Ponticello was very eclectic. Had some jazz influence, and there was a wonderful violinist in the band. He was a good friend of mine. Yeah. And so we had some songs that would be kind of Stefan Grappelli, gypsy jazz influenced. We'd have other songs that were very kind of Celtic and fiddle music. I actually met Chris Murphy playing in the house band at an Irish bar in Seattle, which is where I moved after I finished college. And so we played in the Owl and Thistle house band for a couple of years together, and then we left to form Ponticello. So it was a wonderful few years, but the band was almost too eclectic to kind of gain more traction. Because we'd show up, we'd do some rock clubs, and then we'd play Irish bars, and we'd play kind of restaurant jazz gigs. And so I felt like Chris and I really bonded and had a similar vision in music in a lot of ways.
You're still in touch, or because he's still releasing quite often new albums?
He's doing great. We we'll hang out and have a drink together every once in a while to just catch up. But we haven't really made music in a long time
anymore.
No, but Ponticello was almost like my grad school of music in a way, where we worked hard, we worked a lot, we recorded a lot, we toured and did many shows, and we really was almost like, is the Swiss Army knife a thing that you can compare in Belgium?
Yes.
Where it's like, has all these little tools, so if you need to be one thing, you can one night, and you need to be another band, you can another night. You can be another thing another night. I felt like we did so many things that we never got truly great at any of them.
But then you moved away, in fact, from that type of music to what you are playing since then, which is alt country rock.
Yeah, it was while we were working with Ponticello that I saw The Last Waltz by the band for the first time.
Okay.
And I also discovered Elliott Smith, who was an incredible singer-songwriter.
Yes.
And so I said, okay, I thought, okay, this moody singer-songwriter thing is something I want to do more. I also discovered Whiskey Town and Old 97s. They actually, I remember we did a gig with Ponticello in Salt Lake City. And after the gig, we went back to the hotel room to kind of go to sleep and then get ready for the drive for the gig the next day. And the Austin City Limits, which had the Old 97s and Whiskey Town together, co-billing on it. I remember just sitting there watching like, okay, this is the perfect combination of country music,
what I want to do,
and heart and singer-songwriter music. And I was like, okay, I'm going to combine this with the band somehow. And I didn't really know how, but I started feeling like I wanted to get more specific into, it wasn't even called Americana then. But I wanted to get more specifically into this kind of music. And Chris really loved the eclectic everything. We got to make a living. We got to do this. And I was like, no, I want to narrow the focus. And so that was one of the main things that led to us ending Ponticello and me easing into the solo records and meeting Shooter Jennings and other people like that. The California country rock stuff that I've kind of been inspired by and have done ever since.
When we met the first time for the interview in Utrecht, now 15 years ago or 16 years ago, then I think you just released your third solo album, Divisadero, and North South was released. You gave us your newest record in your hotel room at that time.
Cool!
But then you also said in that interview that in fact I want my next album to be better than my last one released. Do you think you have achieved that now? Because now you're at passing record number 13, I think.
I still believe that I want every record to be better than the last. Now I'm proud of all the records.
But how do you define them? What is, in your opinion, better than the previous one?
And that's a great question. And there are kind of many answers to that. And depending on my instincts and aesthetics, every year that kind of changes. There are some albums where I feel like the songwriting is better. And I got more specific with the storytelling, more specific with the narrative approach to telling songs, telling stories in songs. Like I've always loved writers like Guy Clark, who it's almost like you have a whole short story and you have this whole character's life in a song.
All in 3-4 minutes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there have been certain songs where that's what I'm striving for. And I'm getting better at that every year or two.
But are you also looking at the orchestration in the songs?
Yes, very much so. And I feel like I've had some noticeable jumps in my records in terms of the arranging and the flexibility. Like I've always loved combining country and soul. And so even if you go back to my first record, not the jazz dedications, but the first kind of Americana singer-songwriter record,
it's not real soul music, but it's soul in country.
It's soul-influenced rock.
Yeah.
And you can hear songs where I'm deliberately bringing in the pedal steel, and then a minute later bringing in the horns.
Yeah.
So you go from this Burrito Brothers thing, Graham Parsons, to, oh my God, it sounds kind of like Stax.
Yeah.
Sounds almost like, or the Muscle Shoals horns are coming in. And I really wanted to do that. And I feel like over the years I've gotten more successful with that.
Your big advantage is that you can play all these instruments yourself, so you can add whatever you want.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. But that's one of the reasons I love playing all those instruments, is so I can maybe not be virtuosic on many of them, but I can find the cool little part and do the right little thing to help the song, like add banjo. And even though I wouldn't start gigging in a bluegrass band as the banjo player, but I can play well enough to find the cool chord progression and the cool riff that's going to help a song have a little bit of this extra bounce or bluegrass traditionalness that I love. And I love kind of adding all these little things. And sometimes it's about me playing it. Sometimes it's about me thinking about which friends of mine will add the best thing. Like one thing I'm a good piano player and a good keyboards player. But on almost every record of mine, I'll play most of the keyboards, but then I'll bring in a friend who is a lifelong keyboard player, piano player, because that Dr. John, Leon Russell, Billy Preston thing, where without thinking about it, then go
that you don't,
that I could work out and do if I came up with the riff and practiced it 10 times, I could do it. But so much of my music, so much of the inspiration is the Professor Longhairs and the Dr. Johns and people like that, that I want to bring in someone who can do the thing that I can't on specific songs on every record, so that it's part of the sound of the whole record. And so in elements like that, in terms of arranging, I think I've improved. I also think I've gotten better as a singer. I also think I've gotten better in terms of production and choosing the way to arrange and the way to affect the tones of every instrument, so they play better in kind of the stereo field as you listen. Than as
do you think that producing will be more the future for you, or it will be the mix of both solo performance?
I think it's going to continue being a mix. Like I've produced all of my own records, and I've probably produced another 20 or 25 records for other artists and singers and bands.
Are they coming to you to ask you if you want to be the producer? Yeah.
Many do. And often it's because hey, I really liked this record you already produced with this other person, or I loved your last couple records. Will you produce our records? We want you to help us bring this organic quality or these artful arrangements to what we do.
And is that then always recorded in your own home studio, the Den? Or
not always. We often record it at my home studio, the Den. But sometimes we'll, like say if it's a band, we'll record at a bigger studio for 2 or 3 days to get the basic tracks of drums, keyboards, pedal steel, whatever. And then we'll come back to my studio
I was surprised about the size of your studio, because you look at the picture that you have on your website.
Yeah,
it's very, very small.
Well, here's a good one. It was our garage. We where my wife and I live in our house. The garage is on the street level, so it's a 2-car garage, and then above it you have to walk up the steps to get into the house. So the house is really the second floor, even though it's only a 1-floor home. But you have all the recording equipment, all the instruments in that studio. So we really rebuilt that garage and did soundproofing and put lots of stuff. I really wanted it to feel good, feel like a studio, and feel like a place where you could be artistic, rather than feel like I'm going to this garage. And so I've had that studio for about 10 years now. I've done a lot of records down here. In 2007, you were playing bass in the band of Shooter Jennings. Are you still doing that, or
yes,
still doing it? There were a couple of years in the middle there where Shooter ended up moving to New York and working with some other people. But for a vast majority of that time, I've been Shooter's main bass player, and I still am. And it's wonderful.
You told us then how you got in the band via Leroy.
yeah.
But you're still playing with him then.
I'm still doing it, man. Shooter and I, we've done a lot of gigs, a lot of great sessions.
On your second or third album, you have he has a song of yours, I think.
Yes. Yeah, we've done 3 of my songs on Shooter albums, and Steady at the Wheel on the first one. Last Time I Let You Down on The Wolf, and When the Radio Goes Dead on the Hierophant Black Ribbons record. And then there are a few others where he basically wrote the song, and then I kind of came up with a bridge or came up with a cool thing. So there are some other songs where I have some co-writing credit, but they're really Shooter songs, and I came up with something that was that he felt was important enough that it deserved co-writing.
And in return, he joined you on some of your records.
Yeah, well, it's not a trade in that way, but as our friendship has evolved. Then he's been a guest. And usually, like I never, like when I come to Europe, I really try not to. I don't want the poster to say Ted Russell KAMP from Shooter Jennings.
No.
I'm proud of my work with Shooter, and he's a great friend. But I never want to take advantage of it. Or there's a phrase in English. I don't know how it translates to your language, but I don't want to milk it. I don't want to overuse it.
No, we say the same.
What I mean? You'd say the same thing. Okay.
But then in Dutch.
Sure. No, I love my relationship with Shooter. We've done a lot of great music, and we're going to do a lot more. But I want to, I'm proud to have my own songs and my own performances get out there. And get
do you play with a band in the US?
Yeah.
But not in Europe, I think.
I do a lot of band shows in the U.S. In the U.S., I'll do maybe half solo, half full band. And then when I come to Europe, I will usually play, like actually, after these 2 shows in Belgium, I'll go to Finland. And I have a great group of friends, so I'll have a full band for my Finland shows. And they're incredible. Guys. Yeah, they're all, they're the creme de la creme of the Helsinki scene, and these guys are wonderful musicians. Wonderful guys.
That's a complete different way of performing. If you're not here today, you will be playing solo, and there you have a whole band supporting you.
And I love changing it up. I had a great band in Sweden for a bunch of tours, and so I've done a lot of band stuff in Sweden. There were a few times when I had good gigs in the Netherlands and Germany, where I had a good band from the Netherlands. Do you know Erik de Vries?
Yeah.
Wonderful songwriter. And I did a bunch of shows with him in my first few years.
You wrote a song on your last
Yes, that's right. You wrote a song on Walking Shoes with him. So he's been a good friend. And so for a long time, we would hook up every year and do a couple shows together. And there were a couple tours where he helped put together a band so we could do some band shows. But for the most part, when I've come to the Netherlands, to Belgium, to Germany, it's just solo shows. Hopefully down the road, I'll come back and be able to have a band. Because I love the band thing.
Okay, that will not be in the living room, then it's too small, I think. But
no problem.
Different venues call for different things. And I love the intimacy you get when you're playing alone, and it's just you and the audience, and it's just the lyrics and the song and the feeling. And I love the joint energy you get when all the band musicians are playing together. I mean, you can like rock and get really soulful and groovy That's
It's clear that music is all over you in your blood and veins and whatever.
I'm glad that comes across.
But you also have a family at home. I see on your CDs thanking my wife Jenna and my son Carson.
That's right.
How old is he now?
My son Carson just turned 15.
15.
Yeah, we have.
Any musician in him or not?
I think he has very good musical instincts. He's at a school where everyone has to learn an instrument, so he's playing cello. And he's good, and even after like 3 or 4 months, he was getting pretty good. Okay. And I said, you're a lot better than most people who've been playing an instrument for 3 months. How do they deal with this touring of yours? But before I get to the touring, But I feel like he kind of wants to make music my thing. He doesn't want to compete. You know what I mean? Like there were a few times years ago when I was trying to show him some electric guitar or acoustic guitar, and he'd play and have a hard time, and then he'd watch me play and it just looks easy, and I think that got him very frustrated. So he has other interests. So hopefully, I don't want to force him to do music, because then he might hate it. I want him to enjoy music as much as he does.
Has to come from himself.
Hopefully he will more as he goes on. But he loves listening to me.
He doesn't play the guitar like you, but you don't play the cello like him then.
You're very right. You're very right about that. Yeah.
But how do they deal with the touring? Because you're always on the road somewhere.
Well, depending on the year. And a lot of the touring decisions I make with my wife. There were a few years where I was touring too much. And we were both getting less happy. And we talked about it, and I said, okay, well, let's restructure things. One of the wonderful things about being a musician is I can do it a little differently every year. I can think about what I'm enjoying,
and you can plan
what I'm not happy with, and I can start trying to make changes. It's not like I can call up everyone tomorrow and be like, hey, I want to tour less or tour more, or I want to produce more records and be a sideman less, or I've had enough being an artist. I want to play bass more. But through my actions and my choices and all the friendships I have in the LA community and around the country and around the world, I can kind of retool my world a little bit every year to stay satisfied and stay motivated. And so for the last bunch of years, my goal is to tour. I love touring. I love traveling. I love experiencing, especially when I come to a place like this and seeing a culture that America has been so influenced by, but it's so different from. It's very inspiring for me. So I want to keep traveling, but I want to do it a little less, do it a little smarter. I want to be home for my family more. But I'll still be traveling. Don't you worry.
How did the COVID years influence your performance?
Well, that was an interesting one, because right when COVID happened, I was planning on putting out the record Down in the Den, and so I ended up putting it out anyway, and that would have been like June or July of 2020.
But you couldn't promote it.
I couldn't tour, but I did everything I could online, and it was very satisfying to get it out. And then for about the next year after that, worked on Solitaire. So I have a whole new record, which I did basically at home. So that really kept me going. A lot of friends and other people I work with were sending me tracks to record on and send back. I was doing a lot of co-writing with Zoom and FaceTime. Some of those songs ended up on Solitaire. Some of those songs are going to end up on my next record, which I'm about 3/4 of the way done with. I also did a great record with a band called Stash.
I have it.
Which was, okay, great.
And I reviewed it.
Which was a lot, that's right. Which was a lot of the more rockin' songs that I knew wouldn't fit on Solitaire. And all those songs I wrote with a wonderfully talented friend, Rich McCulley. And so Rich, and then Joey Peters, great drummer and producer, and he co-wrote a lot of the stuff too. The three of us just kind of, we started this band before COVID. But then once COVID hit, we were like, okay, well, let's write and let's send each other tracks and keep it going. And so that was really fun, because that was a lot more rock and like Badfinger and
rock,
Big Star and Southern rock influence.
But you also have some ballads on it, which I like a lot. I like the ballads.
But it's wonderful, because that's less singer-songwriter style than my music normally is. but you still feel my presence in it a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when I hear it, I really feel Rich and Joey in our collaboration. It was really
Will there be
nice to be part of a band.
A next one from Stash, or
I hope so.
but no plans yet.
Not immediately. Not immediately.
But you said you are working on a follow-up on Solitaire.
Yeah.
Which also had quite a lot of excellent musicians, singer-songwriters. Shane Alexander was one of them.
Yeah.
How do you get these people to work on your record?
Normally, it's when I travel through town, and we get together and record in a studio or at someone's home studio for the day.
Yeah.
With Solitaire, everyone sent me tracks. Like 90% of Solitaire is me alone, recording and singing and playing all the instruments.
And gathering all the inputs from the different artists then.
And actually, most of the overdubs of Solitaire are the singers who co-wrote the song with me, sending me their tracks. So like Shane, I co-wrote with a little bit, and so he sent me his vocal track, and I added it to mine and kind of edited it into place a little bit. But on like some of the Shane songs, it's just me playing everything, and then just Shane singing harmony. There's a great song with Ed Jurdy. I was talking to Freddie before about how the Band of Heathens is well known here, and they're good friends of mine. And so I wrote a song with Ed on that Solitaire record, and I said, Ed, will you sing harmony? And he was like, yeah, man, sure. And I was like, will you do a kind of spacey George Harrison slide guitar thing on the intro, on the middle section? He's like, sure. So I sent him my tracks in my Pro Tools session, and then he worked on it for a couple days and sang wonderful harmonies, and also came up with this great slide thing. And so he sent those tracks back to me, and I could edit it all together.
Then you're the producer.
And so but it's wonderful because someone like that, who's such a wonderful instrumentalist as well as a singer and songwriter, it's great to have both. But there are some songs where people are just kind of singing harmony. And
you also had Dan Gallardo, which...
Oh yeah, Don's wonderful. I'm glad you love Don's music too.
Yeah.
Don's great. So Don, we wrote that song together, and then I had the idea of doing it. Part of me has always wanted to do a bluegrass record, right? Especially when you have like Jim Lauderdale and some other people who are like, let's just do a bluegrass record now, or the Steve Earle with Del McCoury Band. I always love records like that. But this particular one, Lightning Strikes Twice, I was like, this is going to be a cool bluegrass song. So the experiment was, I'm gonna be the whole bluegrass band. So I played acoustic guitar, and then I played bass, and then I played banjo, and I played mandolin, and I tried to make it sound like a swinging bluegrass band. And then Don just sang harmony. But it's great because he has that high, this great little falsetto thing he does, which really helps make the track great.
Okay, now maybe something about tonight. You will be alone on stage.
Yes, I will.
With acoustic guitar, electric guitar.
I'll be playing acoustic guitar and electric bass.
Electric bass.
So, So when I play with a band, I play bass and sing. And so.
You have this beautiful song on the Solitaire CD where you only play bass.
Yes. And my last 4 or 5 records, I've always had a bass or 2 bass songs on each record. So one of the things I've been doing, and it's kind of a pattern I really like, is I'll play 3 or 4 acoustic guitar songs, and then 2 or 3 bass and vocal songs. So I'll put the guitar down, so it's just bass and singing. And I've arranged a lot of these songs so that you'll be able to tell at the end, it sounds complete with just bass and vocals. And then I'll do a few more acoustic guitar songs.
Okay, and then maybe a last question. All your songs, I checked them on all these CDs, and most of them are about love in all aspects, but nothing about politics. Aren't you interested in politics, or don't you want to make a statement about politics? Or
that's a very good question too. I'm fairly political. I definitely have my opinions and my beliefs, but I kind of believe that music should bring us together. And I would rather entertain and share stories about this deeper level of what it is to be human. In terms of friendship in terms of love, in terms of survival.
And it doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat, you want to play music for everyone and don't influence people.
Yeah, I have other friends who are very politically oriented. And like, let's take a great example, Jackson Browne. He's one of my favorite singer-songwriters of all time.
Yes.
And he's been very political throughout his career.
Yes. And
he made the decision to speak his mind and on all of these different levels. And yeah, maybe there are people out there who love The Pretender or The Road or some of these classic Jackson Browne songs, but then they say, hey man, I don't really like this political stance he's taking. Yeah. And he's going to alienate some people. And but that's okay for him.
You don't always have to be about politics, but you can also have an opinion about racism or about climate or environmental issues.
Sure.
And that you also don't put in your lyrics of songs.
You're right. I have a couple songs that kind of hint at it a little bit, but you're right. I tend not to deal with immediate social issues in that way.
Okay. So and should make up our own mind then.
And some of I guess some of that is a personal choice. And some of that is just what's interesting to me. I wanna, and I've had this conversation with some people when I produce every once in a while an artist who's like really great and they're 31 years old, and I'm a little older than they are. Yeah. And I'll say this. I'll say, would you rather be trendy, or would you rather be timeless? Yeah, do you want to talk about immediate issues so that a listener will pinpoint you as this is the year and this is your age? Or would you rather try to transcend what we're in right now, so that someone could discover your album 50 years from now?
I think you belong to the second group.
Well, thank you for saying that. And that's always my goal. Okay. You know, I think that's all we can do as artists.
Yes. I think it's time to go down and listen to your performance.
Play a little music?
There will be some other people anxiously waiting for your songs and for your performance. Thanks for having this discussion.
Well, my pleasure.
Maybe in 15 years from now we will have another one.
Hopefully sooner than 15.
Okay, why not?
Awesome. Thank you so much for a wonderful conversation.
Thanks a lot.
And thank you all for viewing and enjoying. Thanks to Roots Time.